Welcome into the Stardom Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen McKinney, joined as always by Ashton Mitchell and Jacob Stevens. Guys, football is officially back. We had our first game last night, Thursday Night Football. And honestly, it was a good one for the first game of the season. Not as many penalties as we were expecting, not as many hiccups and rust to kind of get off their back. We're going to jump into a little bit of what we thought about the game and some recap of the Thursday night game. But we also have a lot of other stuff for you tonight. We're talking injuries, ins and outs for this Sunday. We're talking the second half of games for the Sunday slot as well as the two Monday night games. And then we're going to go through a couple listener lineup questions as well. But guys, are you guys excited that we have actually football back? We've been talking about it. Now it's here. It's reality at this point.
It's happened. It was amazing. Not all having all the fans. They had limited capacity, but me and Ashton actually got together and watched it, and we were still cheering and yelling when it was amazing. I loved it.
That's good to hear. Yeah, I mean, I think what I was hearing was there's only two stadiums or two teams that are going to have fans to at least start the year. We'll have to see, what that looks like as we get a little bit deeper into the season. But it was nice to see some fans in the stands. I mean, that's something we haven't been seeing for a lot of these other sports. And it seemed like they were into it. Like they were making noise. I couldn't really even tell from a spectator view on TV that
exactly
that the crowd noise was any different. So that was I was a little worried we were going to get in there and it was just going to be like dead silence after big plays and stuff like that, and how weird that would be. But it was actually pretty surprising. But guys, let's jump into a little bit of news real quick before we get on to the rest of our show.
News and notes.
First set of news, a little bit of a emotional set of news here. Ryan Shazier, who suffered a devastating injury a few years back, has announced his retirement. There wasn't much hope that he would actually come back and play in the NFL ever again, but we saw him last year, walk onto the field, which was, an accomplishment in its own right. We weren't sure if he'd ever actually walk again. And we saw him do that last year for a Steelers game. It's sad to see, guys, but I mean, I don't think it was unexpected. None of us really expected him to ever come back and suit up again.
Right.
As well as Aqib Talib announced his retirement as well, which was a little bit more surprising. He was in great form as recent as 2 years ago, made the Pro Bowl. So that one was a little bit more of a shocking set of news there. Devine Azigbo, who was, these Jacksonville backfield we cannot figure out.
Rotation station.
First, it was Ryquell Armstead, who everybody was excited about. He ends up on the IR. Then everybody was going to scoop up Devine Azigbo to be the guy. He's on the IR. Look, now we got James Robinson. We still got Chris Thompson, and then they went out and signed Dare Ogunbowale.
Nailed it.
Great pronunciation.
From their down the road counterparts. He was on Tampa Bay, was released by Tampa Bay when they picked up Leonard Fournette. So it's kind of a little swapskis with Fournette and Ogunbowale here. Ashton, who do you think got the better of that one? Would you prefer Ogunbowale?
Who knows, man? Look, if you're in a position where you're putting any faith in Jack's backfield, I'm worried for you.
Wrong.
Yeah, something went wrong somewhere in your draft, and you're going to be hot on the waiver wire each week. I avoid at all costs.
Okay. neither of you guys are interested in Robinson or Gumbawale right now. Just Chris Thompson for now.
I mean, if you got somebody that got hurt, maybe pick up James Robinson, but because they're saying he's kind of the clear-cut starter.
Yep.
I don't trust it. I don't trust anything going on over
neither.
there.
Yeah, I mean now that the other two main guys are on the IR, like they're gonna miss multiple games. It's gonna be James Robinson and it's gonna be Chris Thompson leading the way for at least a few weeks. Even Dare Gumbawale, he's not gonna know the playbook, and he was known as a receiving back last year, was his rookie year, but Tampa Bay they were praising his receiving ability, but we didn't really see him a lot carrying the ball. So James Robinson could be interesting if you have a deep league and you can just stash him at the end of your roster and see what he looks like week one. And then the last piece of news, which caught us a little bit by surprise, was Jalen Reagor has returned to practice in full. He was expected to miss somewhere in the 2 to 4 week range. Wasn't expected to see him back until at the earliest week 2, week 3. But there's some possibility that we might see some limited snaps this week. Jacob, you seem to think otherwise, that he's probably not going to play this week, but it is optimistic to see him back.
Yep, for sure.
Well, that wraps it up for the news, guys. I do have a couple.
What's going on over there?
I'm going to figure out the word here. A couple listener lineup questions for you guys. So I'm just going to run through them real quick and get your opinions. We are the Stardom Fantasy Football Podcast, so I'm hoping that you guys don't miss on either one of these, or else we're going to have to reconsider our name here.
All right, we're going to have to cut that right after this is done.
All right, guys. First up, we have a half-point PPR league here. He has 3 options to start. He can only start one of them. He's got David Montgomery, Darius Slayton, and Cam Akers. Out of those 3, which guy would you guys start?
I'd probably take the gamble on David Montgomery and just kind of follow the news very closely and see if he's going to be able to make it in the game. He did. We'll give an update here soon on him. But he did practice in full yesterday. And he kind of said he took it easy the day before, just trying to kind of take care of himself and get ready for the game. So I got some optimism for him, but I mean, I guess you said Slayton, and I think Akers would be last on my list there. Honestly, there's just, I mean, Malcolm Brown, Darrell Henderson, he's back to full health too. Like, I'm just going through the ins and out. Here I go. I don't know. So, well, actually, maybe Akers second because Slayton is going against the Pittsburgh defense, so that could be pretty terrifying.
Yeah, Slayton's definitely last on my list there. I'd probably go David Montgomery.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm going to go David Montgomery as well. I think all 3 of these guys, have their ups and downs. We weren't sure if David Montgomery was actually going to play. Darius Slayton has an absolutely horrible matchup against the Steelers. And then there's just question marks for this Rams backfield. We don't know if Cam Akers is the guy yet. He's 3rd right now on the depth chart. I would say if Darrell Henderson wasn't a go, Cam Akers would be a little bit more interesting of a consideration. But
for sure.
For now, I think David Montgomery has the least amount of question marks around him. He's going to get the work. So I think he's your best bet for this week at least. All right, guys. The next one, another half-point PPR league. We have Jonathan Taylor, Raheem Mostert, or Melvin Gordon.
Ooh.
Oh, man, that's tough. Jonathan Taylor, like I think we talked about it, their matchup already. Or did we? I can't remember. But anyways, I feel like if they get out to a big enough lead, Jonathan Taylor might just start seeing some just a bunch of carries and some receptions, and Marlon Mack might just kind of rest him. But Raheem Mostert, the carousel. Oh gosh, Ashton, what do you got?
I mean, it's just on a volume base here. I would go Gordon. I'm a little bit more high on Gordon just with workload. I
I'm a little scared of that Tennessee defense too, man. It's like
know, but
they all have upside. That's just oof.
I don't know. I like Mostert, from the group in the backfield with San Fran, but I think it's going to be a shift, and it's going to be I don't know how much workload he's going to get week one. Who was the
I'd say
first
Gordon was probably drafted the highest.
Who was the
Taylor.
Who?
Huh?
What?
Jonathan
Jonathan
Taylor.
Jonathan
you think?
Taylor. Yeah, I mean,
Like in your drafts.
yeah, Jonathan Taylor's going to
Taylor
see
went
work,
before
but I don't know
Gordon.
if he's going to see the majority week one. I would go Gordon.
I'd say Gordon.
For me, this one's tough. I think they're all very similarly ranked this week.
Yeah.
Jonathan Taylor has an absolute beast of a matchup. Like, this is about as good as it gets for matchups. They all are they have the three same issues here, right? Like, we just don't know what those backfields
Like a
look
1-2 punch, 1-2,
Right.
1A, 1A.
They're all
1B, or
splitting
whatever.
carries with someone.
You know what Gordon and Mostert are capable of doing in the NFL.
Gordon has a
Okay.
safer floor, I would say, versus
Yeah.
Taylor. And Taylor has the highest upside.
And Gordon's going to see the goal line work too. So
Yeah, I just think Gordon has the hardest matchup out of the three. Raheem Mostert's a little interesting too, because you would expect him to be the lead guy coming in week one, just based on the last
Expect
half,
the unexpected with Kyle
last half of
Shanahan.
the season. Yeah, but you just never know with that backfield.
Yeah, for sure.
I think I'd probably fire up Jonathan Taylor just because I think this matchup is great and he's going to
It
get
is
the
great.
opportunity. So I mean, I could see all the carries being pretty similar in their stat lines.
Yeah, if those are your
pretty
three
similar.
choices for your like flex, I'm assuming this would be a flex position. Like you
Mhm.
can't be upset. I mean, you just got to weigh your pros and cons and go for it.
you think JT steals the role in week one?
Probably.
Yeah.
I think if they give him 15 carries,
They're going to
He's-
see just how
he's
good
just
he
going to
is.
show out and he's
But-
going to go crazy.
I still like Mac. I think they're both good. You could start Mac and Taylor this week probably. Yeah, that's how bad the Jaguars are.
I don't know. That's risky, but let's see how.
Not
that
if you
would
have them
work
on
out.
the same team. I'm just saying like other people can too. Okay.
All right, two of us go for Melvin Gordon, one for Jonathan Taylor, but I think we're all pretty optimistic on all three of them. They could all start on your respective team. All right, guys, let's jump right into the Thursday night recap. It was a fun game last night. Chiefs ended up pulling it out pretty handily. I mean, it ended up being 34-20, but the Chiefs
all know.
had control of it after they scored the first touchdown, really. But let's jump into a couple surprises, a couple stat lines to go through. But let's start with the rookie, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Starts out his NFL career going 25 carries, 138 yards, and 1 touchdown. Didn't end up being involved in the receiving game. He got one
He got
target.
One pass.
At the
He
end.
almost
Banked.
died.
It got blown up on it. What do y'all take from Clyde Edwards-Helaire? His debut. What did you think? You guys excited? Ash, I know you have him in a couple
Yeah,
leagues.
go ahead, Ashton. I'll let you take this one, buddy.
I have him in 3 out of the 4 that I was chasing him with in my leagues. So overall, I was really excited. A little bit concerned about goal line work. They handed him the ball. I mean,
He had 7. I mean, like 7 goal line touches, and
he could not break through. Jake and I were talking about it when we were watching the game last night, how I kind of wish he had like an early Le'Veon Bell approach and kind of delayed on the burst and let the line
just
open
running
up a little
right
bit.
into people.
Yeah, because
But
he's not a big running back.
he's not a bruiser for sure.
No, I mean,
He's no tank.
it literally looks like he was running into a wall. There was one play where he hesitated, let the line open up, and then burst it through, and he got, I think, like 10 or 12 yards, which was a good run. But, man, they had no answer for the goal line there. So I think Andy Reid's got some work to do on how to, get him in the end zone when they're on the goal line there. But outside of that, in the passing game, which didn't work out for him last night, I think that's just going to be a week by week situation depending on who they're playing. but they'll evolve. They'll come around. I'm not worried about
they'll
it.
probably figure out some scheming.
I'm happy he got, what was it, 25 attempts, 138 yards. He was averaging 5.5 yards per carry. He got a touchdown.
It would have been higher than that if he wouldn't have got stopped at the line 7 times. His yards per carry was like, at one point it was like over 7 after 10 carries halfway there. But
I'm stoked on him.
Yeah, so I think what helped, that was obviously CEH was amazing. And it was nice to see him get that goal work. But it was, I think Patty Mahomes was a little weird at the same time. Like, he was only, his average yards per attempt or air yards was 6.6, which is like super low for him. So I think that might play into why he wasn't making short passes to CEH, is because he was making short passes to Sammy Watkins, who was very involved. I think I was pleasantly surprised with Sammy Watkins with 9 targets, 7 receptions, 82 yards, and a touchdown. You know, Kelsey did his thing in the first half, not surprising. And it goes back to that, how short those passes were. I mean, Tyreek Hill didn't do much. His night was saved when he caught that touchdown. He only had 6 targets, 5 receptions for 46 yards, but he got that touchdown that kind of saved his night. That's kind of from the Chiefs side anyway. Those are kind of the surprises. I think it was definitely wet out there. So I don't know if that affected Patty Mahomes in that way, but what do you think, Stefan? What did you see out there?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's the same concern with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, he had a fantastic night. They were obviously trying to get him going early on in the season. You always have that kind of concern with the rookie running backs to make sure that they can adjust to the NFL speed and stuff like that. But 7 carries inside the 5-yard line for -1 yard, which isn't going to cut it.
Bob.
I mean, let me give you guys a little bit of understanding. 7 carries inside the 5-yard line is a ton. Like last year, these are some of the guys who had 7 carries inside the 5 for the season. Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara, Adrian Peterson, Austin Eckler, Miles Sanders had 6 carries inside the 5. Kenyon Drake had 6 carries inside the 5. So, and those guys all scored touchdowns when they had the chance. So that
it
is
was 3 different drives. He got chances.
Yeah, I mean, he should have had at least 1 or 2 more touchdowns on the night. But it's great that he is getting the work. So I would say stay optimistic. Expect them to maybe, do some little zone reads or something like that instead.
Yeah.
To get him into the end zone, hopefully in the rest of the season. But yeah, I mean, Sammy Watkins was the surprise, right? Led the Chiefs in targets, led the Chiefs in receiving yards, went 7 for 82 and 1 on 9 targets, ended up with 18 fantasy points and half-point PPR. Look, we saw this last year, guys. Sammy Watkins was the number 1 receiver through week 1. Is this just a hoax, or is Sammy Watkins going to be more legit this year?
I don't really think. Go ahead, Ashton. Sorry.
I don't know. Last night was if the season continues like it did last night, then yeah, you could have a phenomenal year. I know towards the end of the season last year he had a better connection with Mahomes, but I don't know. I was pretty surprised with how much he was being targeted last night.
I think we've seen. I mean, he's got the potential to do this. He wants to be in KC. He reworked his deal, but he did the same thing last year, and it's like I think this can happen with the Chiefs any week. I mean, you go down the line. I mean, Mecole Hardman's still there. Demarcus Robinson. Tyreek Hill hardly got any work. So, I mean, do you think that's going to keep happening? Probably not. So I think he's going to have he's going to be boom or bust, just like he kind of always has been.
Okay. And the last piece in the Chiefs that I wanted to bring up was Demarcus Robinson ended up with 3 receptions for 20 yards, but he also dropped 2 touchdowns. So is he interesting at all to you? I mean, he's probably the 5th or
exactly
6th receiving option.
It could be anybody on that offense.
Yeah. Yeah, I was a little surprised to see him as involved as he was with no injuries in that Chiefs lineup. But again, like you said, it can be Mecole Hardman's week next week. It could be Tyreek Hill just going off. It could be Travis Kelce. Like there's so many weapons here that I think for now you stick with the main guys and Kelce and Hill and Clyde Edwards-Helaire until you see someone else emerge really as a clear other fantasy option. Sammy Watkins would probably be the next interesting guy to kind of just have to throw in the right matchup. But let's jump into the Texans side of the field. Deshaun Watson, which if you had him last night, you were probably on the edge of your seat and thinking he was going to have a terrible night. I think going into the fourth quarter, he had 5 fantasy points.
Yep, it was scary.
Actually ended up leading the game in fantasy points by the end of it. He actually beat Patrick Mahomes for total fantasy points on the night. But if you had him, it was not fun to watch the game. Ended up going 20 for 32, 253 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 through the air and 1 on the ground, and an interception as well. The Texans just didn't look like they knew what they wanted to do on offense. It seems like they were trying to establish the run early on when it was still close, and then once it got to the second half and they were down, they tried to pass a little bit more. But what we didn't see was those deep bombs that we're so used to seeing from Deshaun Watson last year. There was games last year where it just seemed like he was airing out Hail Marys to Will Fuller and DeAndre Hopkins left, right, and center. But we didn't see any of those last time. We didn't see any,
None caught anyway. I know he threw a couple to Will Fuller. But yeah, it's true. And I'm seeing Mahomes didn't throw it. He didn't throw it deep a lot either. I'm wondering if the conditions there were just, because it was foggy, wet, maybe it kind of limited them both. But that's the thing about Deshaun Watson. He's a running quarterback, and he got an extra touchdown and saved the game for himself.
Yep. But that offensive line, I think, was a big reason for, why Deshaun Watson didn't look too great.
Not very comfortable.
Yeah. But, does that give you guys any concern with Deshaun Watson going forward? Are you guys a little hesitant to start him after what you saw, or what are your thoughts there? Still full
I'm
fire?
not worried about him. That man just got paid.
I'm a little worried. That last night, his points coming through to save you in fantasy last night. That's 1 or 2 plays away from a big disappointment. So
against the best team in the league, though, so that's kind of something you got to look at too.
Right, but not the best defense.
Not the best defense.
They got a pretty good defense.
Pretty good. But there are a lot of pretty good defenses.
Brandon Cooks was hampered, so that probably didn't help him out. Randall Cobb wasn't even involved until like the fourth quarter. I'm not really worried about it at all. I think they got to find their footing and kind of be able to mix it up because, like you said, they were kind of establishing the run. Then they're like, oh wait, we do have to throw the ball because we're losing now. It didn't seem very balanced on like how they were calling things. But David Johnson, golly day, he looked amazing. I was like, this is the guy of old Dave.
Yeah, I think you're super optimistic you drafted David Johnson. The only thing that maybe concerns you is the amount of work that he ended up getting. He did only have 11 carries, but he was super, super efficient. 11 carries for 77 yards and a touchdown, as well as 3 receptions for 32 yards. So like you said, he looked like he was back into that elite form. And the best part about it was, it wasn't like there was these huge holes where he just had space to run for all these yards. Like he was making cuts, he was making moves. Yeah. He was breaking tackles. Like every single time he got the ball, he looked good. He looked explosive. He looked like he was going to make plays, which I think you're super optimistic about. Because last year with the Cardinals, it wasn't that. It was a lot more just, one direction runs and just getting tackled by first contact. So if you have David Johnson, you should be super, super happy for what you got last night on that amount of work that he got. Ended up with 14 touches, which isn't a lot for a guy like David Johnson who's going to lead the way. But Duke Johnson did lead the game early and is expected to miss some time with a leg injury. So, you might even be more optimistic about David Johnson now as he's probably the only guy that's going to be getting work in that Texans backfield. Let's jump to the wide receivers though real quick before we move into the ins and outs. Like you said, Cooks and Cobb were just not very involved. It looked like they wanted to get Brandon Cooks involved early on in the first drive. I know he had a nice reception, and he ended up with 2 catches for 20 yards on 5 targets, resulting in 3 fantasy points. So probably not what you wanted from Brandon Cooks. Are you guys?
Yeah, game time decision. He's almost out there as a distraction for Fuller. It felt like he wasn't. It didn't seem like he was really getting that full burst that he normally has, and just kind of getting open because he has always been good with that. But Will Fuller was doing it for sure. 10 targets, 8 receptions, 112 yards. Got to be happy with that line right there. We talked about it in our previous show that we expected Will Fuller to have a free-for-all with Brandon Cooks possibly injured, and he did. I mean, I think he did pretty well for himself.
So what is y'all's outlook on Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks going forward? Does Will Fuller look like the clear number 1 now, or are you just still kind of on the fence just because Brandon Cooks was a little hobbled, and it might be a little bit more split as a 1-2 rather than a clear number 1 in Will Fuller?
It's hard to say right now. I mean, if I had to pick one of the two, it'd be Will Fuller. But that could easily change once we see a fully healthy Brandon Cooks out in the field and start to see more of a connection between him and Watson. But
right, because Fuller has been there.
We haven't seen that yet. And another thing that kind of hurts this whole situation is there have been no preseason games to see or build up any of that connection in a live setting. So right. This is going to be kind of a wacky first few weeks in the regular season here. So a lot of things could shift and change. We just kind of have to wait and see how everything unfolds.
Fair enough. All right, guys. Well, that wraps it up for our Thursday night recap. Let's talk ins and outs in terms of some guys who are questionable or had some injuries that we were a little concerned might play week 1. I'll just fire off some names and you guys can tell me what their status is going into Sunday. To start us off, someone we already talked about a little bit, David Montgomery.
I say he's in full practice yesterday. He's kind of managing his workload, but I think he's going to play.
Okay. Mike Williams.
If he's in, I don't care. He should be out of your lineup. He's going to be a game time decision. They said he was going to be out longer, so kind of getting hurried back. Out.
Okay. Darrell Henderson.
Darrell Henderson is also in. I mean, I wouldn't take a shot on him unless you're way down in some super duper flex. But he practiced in full for the second consecutive day, so he's going to be in.
All right. Miles Sanders.
This one's a little tougher. I think they're kind of managing his workload too. I think we saw Jalen Reagor have a full practice, but I don't think they expect Jalen Reagor to go out there and play. So I think they're kind of trying to manage Miles Sanders. I think he's going to be in, and if you drafted him, you're playing him.
Does Boston Scott get you any consideration now with Miles Sanders as a question mark?
Yes.
Maybe in some deeper leagues as a flex position.
I don't even know if it's in deeper leagues. I think they'll use him, and okay. I think he'd have value in half point.
So you agree they're going to be blowing out the Washington football team?
I think they're going to be using Boston Scott.
Okay.
Okay, that's you like that phrasing better.
Yeah.
All right, Golden Tate.
He was limited Thursday. If he does play, I think it's just going to be a limited amount of workload there.
Yeah, he should be out of your lineup.
Brashad Perryman.
He's in. He's fine. He's going to be good.
He's good. Talk to the guy. He's feeling great.
Health-wise, sorry. I don't know if he could be a flex in some deeper leagues as well. I mean, you're going against the Buffalo Bills, so you decide.
Yeah, I mean, if he gets Tre'Davious, he's not in for you. And last up, Deebo Samuel.
Deebo is nowhere to be seen at practice yesterday and the day before, so Deebo will more than likely be out. I wouldn't really take the risk if you can, if you have another option somewhere.
Okay. All right, guys, let's jump into our second, I guess, not really half, but last 6 games to go for the week. We'll start it off with the LA Chargers against the Cincinnati Bengals. Not a high projected scoring affair here, 42-point over-under from Vegas. We're going to see the new look Chargers led by Tyrod Taylor, as well as the new look Bengals led by Joe Burrow. So 2 new quarterbacks to start the way. What are y'all's thoughts on this game here?
It'll be an interesting game to watch. I don't know. I think Tyrod could be very tricky on his feet. I think Joe Burrow could be very tricky on his feet. Burrow is pretty underestimated when it comes to his footwork. So I think it'll be an exciting game. I mean, who do you guys feel you're reaching for in each offense here?
Well, Austin Eckler was my start of the week as running back, so I'm expecting big things out of him. I don't know. I mean, I think Keenan Allen's going to lead the way on the receiving end. Hunter Henry might have a decent workload, but I don't think this is going to be a high scoring affair. I'm kind of with Vegas on this one. They're going to be kind of figuring out what their teams have, and Joe Burrow, he's fantastic, but I don't think they're going to let him loose running too much, and that they'll probably try to protect him a bit, just in the opener. But yeah, that's kind of my side for the Chargers. I got Tyrod Taylor, probably QB2, like kind of upper closer to 20, 24. Not really super excited about him, but the Bengals defense isn't great, so we'll see.
I feel like the Chargers defense is just going to put nonstop pressure on Joe Burrow. I'm expecting a lot of blitz action there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think the Chargers are going to try to get some pressure on Burrow, make the rookie show what he's got. But look, Derwin James is out for the season. I know they acquired Chris Harris in the offseason. But I think this is going to be higher scoring than Vegas is giving it credit for. I mean, there's a lot of big names here that can provide fantasy value. Obviously, Austin Eckler and Joe Mixon are going to, get the work and should get it done for both their teams. Keenan Allen should have a nice game. What are y'all expecting from A.J. Green and Tyler Boyd, though?
If you're going to pick a week to play A.J. Green, I would pick week 1 because I don't trust him after week 1. I think
his body, he's already had a couple of hamstring issue.
I'd be happy for you if you got through a whole game for you.
And I think Mixon's just an insta start on there. AJ Green is kind of wide receiver 2, flex considerations, and Boyd. I think they're kind of the same way. I heard Tyler Boyd had a great training camp. So, but I don't see AJ Green getting anywhere near a wide receiver 1 this week, just because even like you said, even with the Chargers without Derwin James, I mean, they still got a pretty good defense. Chris Harris is out there, Melvin Ingram, all the Hard Knocks boys. I'm not like super high up on them, but I think they're startable players. I
think Boyd could have a good game this week. I'd keep him at flex or wide receiver 2.
Okay. Let's jump into game 2. The Arizona Cardinals taking on the San Francisco 49ers. In San Francisco, 48-point over-under. We have the returning Super Bowl appearance 49ers. They were leading the way and, were expected to win the Super Bowl last year until the fourth quarter and kind of all went south for them. But
got Mahomes.
Do you guys expect the same form from the 49ers this year? Do you expect kind of the same fantasy relevance out of the players? I know we had quite the ride with their running back carousel. Like we said before, with Kyle Shanahan, you don't know who you're going to get that week. You don't know if it's going to be Colonel Mustard leading the way, Tevin Coleman. They got Jerick McKinnon back.
They did lose Breida, so thank God.
Yeah, so they just swapped out Breida for a healthy McKinnon. There you go.
They freed up Breida.
So what do y'all think is the fantasy outlook for this game?
Well, we kind of touched base on it earlier. I think Mostert's going to be their hot hand in the backfield, with Debo most likely being limited or fully out. Look for the pass plays to go straight to Kittle. Who else do they really have? wide receiver. And then
Kendrick Bourne, dude. I told you.
I don't think he's going to get it. I mean, the Bourne identity.
Exactly.
I don't have a lot of faith in. I think Jimmy G's overrated. I think Kyler Murray's going to have a great game, and I think DeAndre Hopkins is going to show everyone what's up. So I'm leaning more towards the Cardinals in this one. Definitely start Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. I think Christian Kirk could see some good plays too.
Yeah. So what I'm looking at here, Kyler Murray, I think it's a tough matchup. I know he did pretty well against them last year, but I don't know, man. I'm afraid of that defense for sure. So I've got him kind of a fringe QB1, right in that range, maybe like a 10 to 12, 10 to 13 range. It's kind of where I'm seeing him going. Hopkins, I think he's gonna be I don't think he's gonna be a wide receiver 1 this week. I think there's still connection they've got to build. They didn't have the preseason. I've talked about this plenty. We don't need to talk about it anymore. Kenyon Drake, obviously, you're throwing him out there. He did well against the 49ers last year, so you kind of hope they can game plan it enough where he can have some success on the ground. Jimmy G is my start of the week on the San Fran side for QBs as a streamer. So that's kind of where I'm at. What do you think, Stefan? Your thoughts?
Look, I mean, I love DeAndre Hopkins, but he draws Richard Sherman in week 1, as well as having a new quarterback. So it is a tough game to really throw him out there with a lot of confidence. Richard Sherman was the number 1 ranked cornerback last year in terms of PFF. So I mean that's gotta concern you a little bit going into week 1. You could see a bigger game on a Christian Kirk. I know they had a little bit of a connection last year. So we'll have to see. With Kenyon Drake, I think he's probably going to be the biggest benefactor week 1, just based on this 49ers defense. On the San Fran side, I'm with you, Austin. Jimmy G just has never met my fancy. I've never been super high up on Jimmy G.
Don't worry.
One of these running backs is going to have a great week. I couldn't tell you which one it is. I think if I'm going to pick one, it would be Raheem Mostert.
Tevin Coleman will probably vulture all the touchdowns, and Mostert will lead in touches. That's probably what happened.
Yeah, I mean George Kittle, you're throwing out every week. So last year we saw this Cardinals defense just give up so many points to the tight ends. So he should have a great game. And then Brandon Ayuk, the rookie, is a little interesting here. We didn't think he was going to play. Turned out a limited practice yesterday. So if Debo's out and Ayuk's in, he could be their number 1. I know they have Kendrick Bourne as their number 1 on the depth chart right now, but I think Ayuk could be a little bit of a little flyer there if you need to fill someone out. Maybe if you have a really deep league, or you start 2 flexes or things like that. You could take a shot on Ayuk if he does end up suiting up. But the last 4:00 game for Sunday, we have the battle of the GOATs here. We got Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans. Breeze against Brady. Vegas is expecting a 48-point over/under. Ashton, we know you're the resident Tom Brady, Gronk believer. So what do you think? What kind of game do we see from Brady and Gronk reunion here?
So I don't know if we added this to our injury list too, but Mike Evans was dealing with an injury. Looks like he might be out for this week. If that's the case,
Game time decision. Those are the best.
I mean, and then it's a hamstring injury, correct? I think it's the same hamstring.
Dude, almost 90% of the injuries have been hamstrings, and it's just people going full speed, So it's.
But
it's tricky.
He had a hamstring injury last year, and apparently it's the same hamstring, which is a big concern for me. But I mean, if this is a substantial injury and he's going to miss time, this obviously bumps up Chris Godwin and my boy Gronkowski. So I think they could have monster games. Look, I think
What
it's
do you
going
think Tom Brady finishes this week, Ashton? That's what I want.
I think he could be a top 5 QB this week.
Oh man, come on now.
Hot damn.
Dude, what? I mean, I'll put a bet on it. But I kind of went over this in our last show. I think Tom Brady's just going to utilize passes straight through the middle. But I'm putting money on a deep pass on the outside to Gronk in this game. As far as Fournette and Jones and the rest of the backfield, that crazy backfield goes.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I'm kind of avoiding it, but if I had to pick one, I'd probably lean towards Fournette. I think he'd get the goal line work. He's a bigger running back, a little bit more experience there. So maybe lean towards Fournette if you have him and don't have many options on your roster. I think Breeze is going to come out and just try to show everyone what's up. I think he's just kind of been overlooked this offseason. And we've touched base on this before too. I think he's out here this year to break records. This potentially could be his last year. And I think he's going to try to start off the season with a big win over Tom Brady. I don't think he gets it. I think it's going to be close, but I think he's going to put up a lot of passing yards this week.
Who's favored in this game, Stefan?
It's the Saints. It's the Saints.
Yeah. It's the first time in 77 games that Tom Brady was an underdog in the game.
Wow.
And I think that's rightfully so because I think the Bucs are definitely going to lose to the Saints this week. I think it's going to take a while before they get everything going because they've got so many pieces. The Saints, they're not much has changed for them. They added Sanders instead of Ted Ginn. So I know the Bucs have had a pretty good rush defense, but I think Kamara is still going to be involved in the passing game on the Saints side of things. Michael Thomas, I mean, he's a decent wide receiver, so just kidding. He's going to pop off like always. I'm not worried about that secondary. What do you think for Sanders and Cook this week, Stefan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too excited about either one of them. I mean, Cook can always find the end zone. I know Drew Brees likes him in the red zone. Like you, I think, obviously Michael Thomas is a must start every week. It doesn't matter who he plays. Yeah. But I mean, this is a great matchup for him. With Kamara, like you said, like this Tampa Bay rush defense was actually super, super good last year.
They top 5, I think.
I think they actually allowed the least amount of rushing yards against them.
Wow.
And it was by a solid margin. I mean, the second place team was the Jets, and they allowed 210 more yards than Tampa Bay. So
do you think it was because their secondary is doo-doo?
No, I think
people were just throwing it on them.
Their defensive line is big, and they're built to stop the run. So I think you could have some question marks there with Kamara. I know he had some injury concerns last year. So I don't think this is the best matchup to start his season, but I mean, he's so versatile. He's going to get it done in other ways for you. So I don't think you should be too worried. And on the Bucs side of the ball, Ashton, you can continue preaching to me every single episode that Tom Brady is
I will do that.
At this point in his career, I think he's game manager mode. He's not, the Tom Brady that gets it done on the stat line anymore. So I'm not as optimistic as you are. Definitely am not expecting a top 5 finish by any means.
He is ranked at 12 this week, so just letting you guys know.
Yeah, I mean, I think 12 to 15
that's
is
a
more his
QB1.
range.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, the last QB1. But
Whoa.
Leonard Fournette or Ronald Jones, one of them is going to fall into the end zone. They're going to get a little carry inside the 5, and one of them will find his way into the end zone. I don't know which one it's going to be. I'm not taking the chance of figuring it out by putting either one of them into my lineup. But look, one of them is going to score. So if you have the faith, throw one of them out there, and you'll probably be rewarded with a touchdown. And if you draft
Scotty Miller,
no. If you draft Mike Evans or Chris Godwin, you're going to play them. I mean, that's just you draft.
Just keep an eye out for Evans. He is a later game, so you're going to want him in your flex more than likely if you can if your lineup can stand it. That's just something you got to pay attention to because once that game starts and they're stuck in your wide receiver, you're just
going back.
Get screwed. There's no going back until you lose. So don't do that. Pay attention to your lineups and pay attention to injuries. we'll try to keep posted on our Twitter and maybe our Instagram as well. Keep you guys updated.
Yeah, and I think Gronk gets a little bit of a boost if Mike Evans doesn't end up playing. But for now, I think he probably plays. All right, guys, let's move on to the Sunday night game, the best game of the week. Obviously, if the Cowboys are playing, it is the best game of the week. We have the Dallas Cowboys at the new SoFi Stadium. LA Rams, second highest projected gain total of the week, 51.5 point over under. Jacob, I'll let you lead the way. What are you expecting for the Cowboys this week?
Honestly, I'll speak on both teams. I think it's going to be a shootout. I don't see either one of these defenses really just kind of dominating. I can see Jalen Ramsey really holding back Amari Cooper. I think Cooper's trying to get some revenge though, because he's been shut down every time by Ramsey. So maybe they'll swap him out and kind of move him around. But I think Gallup's going to benefit from that and open things up for Blake Jarwin as well. I think, like I said, I think it's going to be a shootout. So Woods, Cup, I think it's going to be just points for everyone.
Cooper concerns me in this game. I'm not really high on Cooper this year anyways. I'm a big fan of Gallup, and I think CeeDee Lamb could come out here and have a great rookie performance. I don't know. A little concerned about the Rams. They struggled a lot last year on the offensive side of the ball, but I think Woods could have a great game. I'm kind of leaning a little bit more towards Malcolm Brown in this matchup. I think he might get some goal line work and see maybe 1 or 2 touchdowns. Tyler Higbee could be targeted in the red zone as well, so maybe keep an eye on him if you have him as an option. Definitely start Dak. I'm a little hesitant towards Jared Goff. I like the Cowboys defense this year. So
there's a lot of mouths to feed on both sides of the ball in this game. There's a lot of fantasy options on a lot of teams here for both teams. But I think Dak is going to be in your lineup if you drafted him. Obviously Zeke is. I agree with you guys. Amari Cooper's probably has the worst matchup this week in terms of fantasy, just because, if you draw Jalen Ramsey, he's probably going to shadow Cooper, and that's
not what you want.
Not what you're looking for. So yeah, I could see Michael Gallup and CeeDee Lamb having good games as a result of that. I think they're going to try to get CeeDee Lamb involved early. I know that they in training camp they've been drawing up some trick plays to get him involved. Some screens, let him carry the ball in some reverses and things like that. So I think CeeDee Lamb could have a good game for his debut. On the Rams side of the ball, that backfield is the question
I just don't want any part of it, man.
Look, I think Ash, I understand the Malcolm Brown. Like, he's the veteran. He's the guy that that at least the Rams trust.
And he's been healthy.
Work.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, he's the least talented out of the three, right? Like, you have Darrell Henderson, who his stats in college are like the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen. And then you have Cam Akers, who was also fantastic for Florida State. So, they're going to try – it's going to be such a split to try to see who the guy is that, it is scary to throw any of them into your lineup. But someone is going to emerge, I think, as the guy who's going to be solid and who they're going to roll into week 2 with a lot more confidence. I think you're going to have this backup clear up this week. And then Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, they're both great guys to have on your team. And I think you have to start them before you drafted them. They're probably your wide receiver 2, possibly, 3 if you draft a lot of wide receivers. But, there's some question marks on this Cowboys secondary. I think if anywhere that they struggle, it is the secondary. They got rid of Byron Jones as well. So, you can probably expect a big game from one of the two, if not both of them. Robert Woods is going to get his receptions, his yards. Cooper Kupp can find the end zone any week. And Tyler Higbee, again, he had a fantastic end of the season last year. So he could be an interesting play too. We saw Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch actually pretty good in coverage though on their tight ends. So maybe not the best matchup.
Who do you have higher in this matchup, Woods or Cooper Kupp?
I think they're probably
I'd say Woods.
pretty similarly ranked for me. I think I would take.
Depends on who gets the touchdowns, really. I mean, I think
Yeah.
they're going to be close until someone gets the touchdown.
Yeah, I mean we've
And
seen
Cooper
it,
Kupp is kind of that touchdown specialist for them.
yeah, they're 1A and 1B in terms of receivers for LA. It's not a clear 1 and 2. So I think either one can get it done. I don't think one's clearly has a better situation than the other for this matchup.
On a side note, did Cooper Kupp get did his contract finalized? Or are they still?
I think they're still working on it.
Yeah.
But Robert Woods is ranked higher this week.
Yeah, I have Robert Woods higher this week.
Okay. All right, let's jump into Monday night
Monday.
football here. We got 2 games on the docket for Monday night. But let's start with the Steelers at the New York Giants. 46-point over under. What are you guys expecting for this one?
I think this is going to be a switch for old Ben. I think this is going to be an away game that he actually takes away with a W. So I'm looking for Big Ben to have a nice game. I think James Conner's going to have a good matchup here, and I'm looking for Juju to get at least one touchdown. So definitely start Juju. Daniel Jones, though, I'm pretty hype on him this year. He put on some extra muscle mass. He's gotten some extra work with and a better connection with Sterling Shepard this year. I'm not as high on Darius Slayton as I previously thought I would be. And obviously with Golden Tate being questionable, that's a concern. But Saquon and Shepard definitely worth a start there. I mean, obviously Saquon, you're not going to not start him. So
yeah. So Big Ben was almost like I've talked about. He was almost one of my starts of the week for a QB, and Daniel Jones was my sit of the week. So I think that's just kind of how this game's going to roll out. Like you said, Saquon is guaranteed. That defense it's nasty. I think Evan Ingram might get involved if he could stay on the field, and he could probably have a pretty good game. As I think James Jones is going to be getting rocked all game long by T.J. Watt. And James Conner, honestly, I don't see him having like a huge game. I think he'll lead their team in touches, get a touchdown. And then I think they're just going to, once it gets toward that back half of the game, they're going to start mixing in Benny Snell, maybe McFarland, kind of just protecting him because they know, I think they're going to limit his load this year. But
they don't want to overuse him, especially right out of the gates.
Right, exactly, against the Giants, which I don't see them putting up a huge fight. I mean, that defense, like I said, so good. And Juju, Stefan, for you, I hope he does great as your star of the week. I think they're going to try to force him some targets. After last year, basically felt like the lost year without Big Ben, and there was a lot of doubt and shade thrown on Juju. So I think they're going to try to force him some targets, kind of get him going. And Deontay Johnson is looking like a pretty good play this week. Eric Ebron, I could see him catching a touchdown in the red zone. I think it's kind of full steam ahead if you got Steelers, those Steelers right there. What are your thoughts, Stefan?
Yeah, I mean, on the Giants side of the ball, the only guys I have any faith in here are Saquon and Evan Ingram. I don't think I'd start any of those receivers this week. We saw last year this Pittsburgh secondary was for real once they got Minka. So those guys definitely scare me. They're not of interest to me this week. And Daniel Jones, I just think he's going to get blown up all game. But on the Steelers side of the ball, I think you have fantastic matchups. I think James Conner is going to have a great week. Now that he doesn't have as much pressure on him, I think he's healthy. Big Ben's back, so you have to respect the passing game. So I think that could open up the field for James Conner. And then on the receiving side, obviously I agree. Juju Smith-Schuster is my start of the week. I expect him to go out and do his thing. Big Ben came out and was giving high praise to Deontay Johnson, which was a surprise to me just because they haven't had the time to really build that chemistry yet in real game situations. But yeah, I mean, we heard it through camp that, the Steelers organization really likes Deontay Johnson, but we hadn't heard it from Big Ben himself to give him that praise. So if you have Deontay Johnson, if you took a chance on him later in drafts, that should, be very, very, make you very, very hopeful for what he can produce. We've seen Big Ben, show fantasy relevance for his top two guys for multiple years. So if you have Deontay Johnson, maybe this is where you give him a chance and let him go show what he's got, because this is a fantastic matchup. This Giants secondary has had issues in the offseason. They lost one of their guys to legal troubles. You just don't know what you're going to see with this Giants secondary this year. So expect Big Ben to have a big game, James Conner to have a big game, and Juju Smith-Schuster would be my definites. If you want to roll out Deontay Johnson or Eric Ebron, be my guest. They could probably end up with pretty solid outings, but I am not, they're not sure.
Would you put Johnson in your flex, Stefan? Or
yeah, I mean,
be the only place you'd consider him.
Yeah, depending on what my options were, Deontay Johnson would definitely catch my eye a little bit this week.
Cool.
All right, guys, last game of the week, the late night slot for Monday night. The Tennessee Titans at the Denver Broncos. Not expected to be a very high-scoring game. 41 point over/under. What do you guys have for this game?
Terrible feelings. This is a tricky one. We kind of touched on it earlier with kind of deciphering that backfield and if Gordon's going to be a good start this week against the Titans. And then at the same time, the Titans at Denver is always a scary matchup. They just do really well. So, I mean, I'm not starting Drew Lock, Avi, Ryan Tannehill if I have to. I'm not really pumped up about this matchup. Derrick Henry, insta start for sure. I think A.J. Brown's he's going to get a touchdown. I mean, and that's what's going to kind of be his week. Him and Jonnu Smith might have some success. But, I mean, Von Miller's out, so that pass rush is a little – or the what am I calling it? Whatever. They're up front, won't be as strong. But what do you see from Denver, Ashton? What do you got on their side?
Well, with Courtland Sutton
his shoulder fell off. That's right.
He's dealing with an AC sprain. So I expect this could be a potential big opportunity for Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, I got it.
Noah Fant could see an increase in targets as well. But I think the workload's going to go towards Gordon and Lindsey. Like I said, I think Gordon will get most of the workload, and then Lindsey might be, a pass down back. But I could be surprised with how they utilize Lindsey as well. So I don't think Lindsey's fully phased out, but I think the majority of the work's going to go towards Gordon.
This just feels like a defensive game. What's the over/under, Ashton? I mean, Stefan?
42. Or no, 41, sorry.
Yeah. What is that, the second lowest?
Second lowest on the week, yep.
And you got to remember Von Miller's out for the season with an ankle injury.
Mm-hmm.
So
and Bradley Chubb.
So Denver's kind of tore up right now. So I think it could lean towards the Titans here.
Yeah, I mean, I expect obviously Derrick Henry is going to get a ridiculous amount of carries. And I expect them to be leading the way on the Tennessee side. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting in terms of the receiving options for Denver. You have to keep an eye on Courtland Sutton. He is considered day-to-day for right now. Not sure if he's going to be a go. But I was excited for Courtland Sutton this week. All reports out of camp have said that nobody can cover him. And he's just been fantastic. So, I mean, I was expecting a big, 1-2 punch with Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy this year. But yeah, if Sutton's not a go, Jerry Jeudy and Noah Fant are great plays. This Tennessee defense, while they were good, where they really struggled was defending these receivers. So if Courtland Sutton plays, I would keep an eye on the injury report, because if he's considered, a snap count and things like that, I'm not optimistic about him. But if he does play on a full capacity, I would definitely start Courtland Sutton here, as well as A.J. Brown. I think both of these top receivers will have fantastic games. And if Cortland Sutton doesn't play, I'm putting Jerry Jeudy into my lineup. I have him in our Dynasty League where we had 2 flexes, and I'm happy to put Jerry Jeudy in if Sutton doesn't play. But if Sutton does play, I'm not starting Jerry Jeudy yet. I want to see what his involvement is on this offense. I want to see Drew Lock in year 2 and see if he's taking that step forward. But yeah, Noah Fant as well, I think is a good play this week too. I'm excited for him in year 2. A lot of these tight ends break out in year 2. So Noah Fant should be a great play. What about Jonnu Smith, guys? Is he someone that you're considering a tight end this week?
Yeah, I mean, he was going late in drafts. I mean, if you were able to pick him up even as a backup tight end, depending on who you have on your roster. But I liked him last year. I think he showed a lot of potential. So this could be a good matchup, especially with Denver's deep kind of tore up. So
Yeah,
definitely worth a consideration.
Yeah, I would consider him and just kind of look at your matchup. If you have another tight end and you don't like that matchup as much, this couldn't be bad. I mean, he's projected around 12, 13, so tight end 1 fringe, which isn't great. But like I said, it depends on what you got on your team.
All right, guys, last question here on this matchup. This Denver backfield, we don't have,
Clarity
on exactly what the situation is going to look like. A lot of reports out of camp thought that Melvin Gordon was going to be the clear-cut number 1, but some are saying it's going to be more of a split than we expect. Melvin Gordon hasn't emerged as, clearly better running back than Phillip Lindsay in camp yet. So week 1, without clarity, are you guys preferring Phillip Lindsay, the veteran who's proven himself here, or are you preferring Melvin Gordon, the newcomer but Pro Bowler, to kind of take the lead here?
I take Gordon all day.
Yeah, I'm leaning Gordon.
Okay. If you have Phillip Lindsay, are you considering him for your flex, or is he just
I take Gordon all day.
Okay.
So
I got to see what it looks like before I can throw Wild Phil out there when they just paid Melvin Gordon to come there. I know he was struggling with the altitude, and that's kind of why he didn't separate, but I think he's going to be fine by the time this game gets going.
So I'm playing you in my Dynasty League, in our Dynasty League this week, Stefan, and I had Brandon Cooks in. It was a game time decision, but I left
him.
I played him.
I didn't even see that. That's a great play out of you, though. Good job.
And I had Phillip Lindsay on my bench, and I'm
so we're hoping he does bad.
I'm thinking I might have made a mistake. So we'll see.
Based on Brandon Cooks, you made a mistake, but.
Well, you hyped him up so much this offseason. So.
He was injured. You knew that.
I see what you did. You knew I was going to draft him, play against you week 1. It's all set up.
This was all for week 1.
Collusion.
That's it.
All right, guys. That wraps up week 1 of the NFL for our podcast. But, guys, I'm super excited for these games this week. I'm excited to have football back. I'm excited to get this season going and get our podcast going for year 1. So looking forward to the rest of the season, guys. That wraps it up for week 1. If there's nothing else that you guys got, make sure to
I would just say to send in questions. Like, just because this is our last podcast, we normally answer questions on the show doesn't mean we won't send you responses on social media to help you start your lineup.
Yep. And for the rest of the season, guys, feel free when you do have these lineup questions. I was struggling with some lineup starts and sits this week and still am, coming into Sunday. But if you guys are going through the same, feel free to send us, your questions throughout the season, and we will address them on the show or address them right back to you. Send them to our DMs on Twitter, Instagram. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're now available on Google Podcasts, which is a great feat for us, guys, as well as YouTube. So make sure to check us out. Give us a like. Give us a follow. But that wraps it up for week 1, guys. Goodbye.
Farewell.